To the March 13th, 2024 Committee of Finance of the City Council. Committee members present this evening: President Zarella, Councilors Walsh, Boschman, myself, Councilor Di Natale, chairing. This meeting is being recorded for public broadcast. I ask anyone in the audience who is recording this meeting to please state your name and address for the record. Seeing no one recording, I ask that everyone please place their electronic devices into silent mode. Typically in these committee meetings, I will refrain from having a general public comment until we get to the matters at hand. Typically, we have department heads here to speak on those orders as they come up. And I know there's some people in attendance this evening regarding the Community Development Block Grant funding, which, as we have done in previous meetings, we will take up the matter of the CDBG package piece by piece. We will allow councilors to ask members who are here for specific items questions if they have any. No need to make any presentations. We're not going to take any presentations. You've already done all that stuff with the planning board. So if you're not called upon to answer questions, then that's where we'll be. So we'll start first with items preceding the CDBG. That'll be last this evening. We will begin with 04921, in order that the City of Fitchburg hereby appropriates the sum of $65,000 from available funds, crediting as follows: Law, Labor Council, $35,000; Law, Damages, Persons and Property, $30,000. And I have here a letter so, Ms. Auditor, this is for Labor Council and damages for the balance of the fiscal year?
Correct.
Okay, so these supplemental costs are involving labor negotiation and persons and property damages that have been incurred by the city?
Yes.
Okay. President Zarella?
Thank you. I'm just curious if there's any information that is both able and suitable to be publicly shared regarding what the damages arose out of.
Well, what's happened at, I don't have the budget report in front of me, but the budget has been exceeded at this point. So, yeah. So this is just in the event that there are pending cases. So in the event that those settle between now and the end of the year.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Makes sense to me.
And the budget for Labor Council of $40,000 has about 2% left in it. So this is to cover us for the remainder of the fiscal year for any other labor matters that come before us, because right now practically the budget's been expended. So,
all right, that satisfies me. I yield the floor.
So we're over budget right now on persons and property, and we're at budget on Labor Council with about 4 months to go. 3 months to
It's actually
about 4 months to go. So this is to get ahead of any additional expenses to carry us through the end of the fiscal year. Councilor Boschman, did you have a question?
That was my question, the same question that my fellow councilor had, so.
Okay.
motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve 04924. If there are no discussions, we will take this on unanimous consent. Seeing none, it passes. Sorry. 05024. Order that there be and hereby is appropriated the sum of $72,110.97 for reserve for appropriation PEG access expenses to support capital needs at the FATV broadcast location.
I guess that's, Mr. President, isn't that the one we pay every quarter or from, no, it's not the one?
This is, I will defer to the Deputy Auditor to explain further, but it is not the quarterly franchise fee from Comcast and Verizon, but it's within that PEG family. I have a letter here from Trevor Bonilla, the Information Technology Director, who reached out to me to ask if he needed to be here this evening because he had another commitment, and I told him he didn't have to come, so I don't want anybody to think he was bailing on the meeting. I told him I didn't think he was needed. I thought the letter he provided was sufficient enough. But the letter he wrote says as follows: the city has recently received a request from Nathan Glennie, Executive Director of FATV, for funding to buy or replace equipment needed at their broadcast location. This equipment will replace some aging equipment and give FATV the ability to digitize old film reels. We would like to fund this purchase out of the city portion of the PEG capital funding that we split with FATV. Therefore, I request that the total of $72,110.97 be appropriated from the PEG Access and Cable Fund and credited to Information Technology Franchise Fee Account. These funds will be sent to FATV for the purchase of said equipment. So it's the Comcast Verizon money that's gone to the city that the IT department manages, now being appropriated to FATV for covering these capital needs that fall under that PEG spending stipulation. So this isn't that quarterly tranche of revenue from Comcast and Verizon. It's revenue they've already provided us that we're now allocating to FATV for capital needs.
I'll make a motion, unless you get questions, make a motion, we accept.
Second? Briefly on the motion?
Motion made and seconded. President Zarella?
I'd just like to note briefly on the motion that I'm glad we're doing this, and while I understand the budgetary needs of the IT department are probably implicated on a long-term view, I do think that if and when it is possible, 100% of this should be allocated to FATV, because that is the purpose of the surcharge to Comcast and Verizon in the first place.
I have a motion made and seconded to approve the appropriation. Any objections? Seeing none, passes. Next, we move on to 05124. And if the committee will oblige me, I don't wish to read the whole thing, but I will read the first line. Order the sum of $39,500,000 be and hereby is appropriated to pay the cost of various sewer separation projects, including but not limited to sewer separation projects CSO 032, 045, and 083 separation rehabilitation, and ongoing repairs and rehabilitation of the sewer system infrastructure in the city, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is another major tranche of loan funding out of the wastewater department to continue with meeting the consent decree with the Environmental Protection Agency and the Department of Justice. Correct, gentlemen?
Correct. Yes.
And can you just briefly explain where these projects, this $39.5 million, where this is going to be appropriated to once the loan is procured? So what areas are we working on?
This is for Phase 2 and Phase 3 of the next project. We are currently in Phase 1, which is CSO 10. That's up in the northern Main Street in that area. That's scheduled to finish by the end of this calendar year. And then this coming spring, we're going to start CSO 32 project. And that area is up around Prospect Street, Mechanic Street, and then it's going to swing over to almost Mount Vernon Street. So that whole area is Phases 2 and Phases 3. The additional funding, $39.5 million, is to take care of that area up there. I can go through and read the reasons why we need it if you like.
I mean, you say there's reasons we need to do it, but I thought isn't that part of the decree? We
Right.
have to separate?
I just have the
Or do we-
details.
Okay, I mean,
Yeah.
we have to separate that section, correct?
Correct.
That's just the next level of separation we have to go through?
Correct.
And so once we get through, you said Mechanic Street, Prospect, Mount Vernon,
Yep.
is there anything beyond that, or is that another loan order in the future?
In the future, we have a couple of other areas that are outside of the city. Up on CSO 4, which is up River Street a little bit, up by Oak Hill Road, and then there's some down closer to the wastewater treatment plant. So those are the final CSOs. So this one right here is mostly all downtown.
Okay.
This is the big one. This is the one that's going to reduce a lot of the infiltration that's going down to the treatment plant, that's causing so many problems at the treatment plant and causing us to, waste a lot of chemicals and other stuff. So when this gets done, we still have 2 other projects that we're going to be doing.
That would be funded outside of this 39.5?
Correct.
So this 39.5 only covers those subject areas you mentioned earlier. How
Right.
many miles are we talking?
7.
I think it's roughly 7
Yeah, I would say.
7 miles of sewer line that we have to separate.
of combined sewer, yes.
Yeah, so we're separating the sewer and the storm, so.
Okay. And you said, gentlemen, that after this is done, we have 2 more?
Not to this size, but there are 2 more projects coming up. There's also a potential tertiary treatment down the road. If, when these projects get done, we have to do a reevaluation, and then the EPA and the DEP will see if we still are requiring to do tertiary treatment. We're hoping we're not. I mean, that's a $50 price tag right there.
50 million?
50 million. Yeah, that's in today's dollars, and we see how things have escalated just on the last 5 years. We're hoping that with the reduction of the infiltration and all the excess water coming in from this project alone will help us eliminate the need for the tertiary treatment.
And let's just assume that that tertiary treatment is required of us by our
Which may be, we just don't know.
by our overlords in D.C. Is that the end of this? I ask this every time we get this loan over because my constituents will say to me tomorrow, we did another loan? How much more are we doing here? I keep hearing like 2030 is like the date where this will all be swept off, we're done. But where are we at right now? So after this is done in the downtown area,
Yep.
those other few projects you mentioned, let's assume the government says you got to do that 50 million. How much longer do we have on this before we have fully realized the terms of the consent decree?
I believe the tertiary treatment is the last item on the consent decree. So once we get to that point, the consent decree requirements should be fulfilled. We'll have to go back in front of them to make sure, but what they're asking will be done.
But we won't know that until this next phase is finished, before they come in and reevaluate.
Yep.
Right.
If they were to reevaluate and say the tertiary is needed, does that impact future rate increases or rate structure? Because right now, as I try to explain to the public, every 5 years we have a new rate schedule for wastewater that covers these loans in the future. So this loan we're appropriating to the public is already baked into your rates that you're
Correct.
paying currently. Is that 50 million tertiary in our current rate analysis, or is that in the next?
No, that is currently in the sewer rate structure that we presented to you last year.
Correct.
So that's all included. This project, the future projects, and tertiary treatment is inside that number.
So I would assume then at the point of interest of when we figure out if we're actually going to move forward with this, there will probably be a lot of discussion and comment about, is that rate schedule valid anymore because we're not required to do it?
Mm-hmm.
You know where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
I understand we have loans to pay off, but that's already baked into the future, the rates we've already been achieving. But if our future rates are predicated off of this $50 million tertiary project and it's not needed, the obvious question from the ratepayers are going to be, well, why are we still paying the bill for something
It's a
we're
valid
not
question,
funding
too.
for?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I know I'm getting ahead, but these are the questions I get when we have these loan orders come before us. When is it done? And understanding that when the projects are finished, the rates aren't going to drop because we got to pay for the loans because they're 20-year loans.
Right.
But the rate structure is based on anticipated work in the future. And if there's a big piece that's not happening, I believe the constituency is going to expect a reduction in that rate increase to accommodate not needing to do it. That's just, so I'm hoping once we find that out, and when will you guys know when that is decided upon or not? So how long is this project going to take, this next tranche in downtown here?
So the next 2 phases are anticipated to take approximately 2 years. So phase 2 will start towards the end of this year and overlap into next, and then The Phase 3 project will start next year and overlap into the following year. So once that is completed, we'll see numbers down at the treatment plant and be able to better assess the effect that that's
So
had.
2026, we'll be doing another
We
assessment?
should see an effect on the treatment plant by then.
Okay,
But they're going to want us to do a detailed evaluation when we get the CSOs done.
right,
So,
okay. Council Bushman?
Question. We talked earlier today, you and I asked you a question, I'll ask you again. How much have we spent so far total on this?
so far, the city has incurred $73.83 million in SRF-funded consent decree-driven costs. The remaining consent items are expected to cost an additional $171 million. Remaining separation, investigation, and construction projects, of the $100 million remaining, this includes the $36 million loan for the sewer project and the requested 39.5 they were asking for today. So that's part of the 111. That's additional. The remaining $35.5 million is for the remaining sewer separation projects in order to become compliant with the consent decree to be conducted between 2025 and 2030. So the remaining $35 million will be for those other CSO projects that we mentioned. And the consent decree mandated secondary system, SSES, the sanitary sewer evaluation survey work, is an additional $60.5 million remaining, and this will occur between 2030 and 2036. So once all these projects are done, we have to do an evaluation survey for a period of time to make sure that everything is where they want us to be. And we're also, the $50 million for the potential tertiary treatment is factored in there too.
No. So basically, if you really read those numbers quite fast, and my mind's kind of slow here. So basically, you're talking about $250 million basically around there, that cost for this project. Now,
Yep.
bear in mind, councilors, I just want to say something, nothing against you, nothing against you, Nick, so don't take it to offense. When I talked to Jeff, remember Jeff, the previous commissioner we had? I asked the same question that my fellow councilor asked. Do we ever expect to see the rates go down? According to Jeff at that time, when I asked him before he left, he said, don't expect the rates to go down. He says, because we got to pay for the bill, that's number one. And he said, we're always going to have to upgrade, keep on upgrading, because we have an old system, and the pipes in the roads, and the work in the road underground are old, real old too, especially sewer pipes. So that's what he told me before he left, because I asked that. I couldn't wait till it was over. My question to you is, when we're digging up phase 2 and 3, are we also trying to keep ahead of the MS4 program at the same time that we're doing these kind of things, so the EPA can't come back to the city of Pittsburgh and say, hey, you dug it up and now you got to do the MS4 and we got to start over again and dig it up for the MS4 program?
Yeah, so as part of the sewer separation, we're installing new drainage, and we're sizing that drainage for the 10-year design storm. But instead of using today's rainfall data, we're projecting that out to the year 2070 to add some resiliency based on some of the statistics that we use for calculating rainfall runoff. So that's very much consistent with the requirements of the MS4 permit. In addition, all of the new catch basins and all that will be installed per the specs required in the MS4 permit. So deep sump catch basins and all that good stuff. At the same time, we're also using funds from the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Grant Program. Tough to say that quickly. But we're using that to look at these projects and figuring out ways that we can incorporate green infrastructure and some of the new stormwater techniques for treating water quality and whatnot, and incorporating those into the construction work for this combined sewer separation. So we're using a couple different grant programs to fund a couple different initiatives. So the MS4 program plus the consent decree requirements.
No, my question to you is, I was talking to Mr. McNamara on the thing. We're doing this project, and we have, and especially in the downtown area, there's a lot of multifamily houses. and a lot of the multifamily houses have drains in the center of the roofs. And the drains do not go out into the grounds, they pipe right into the city line. And you're cleaning clean water, and it's costing us a lot of money. Are we going to the multifamilies and say to them, we want to solve that problem now because we're going to start to really enforce the rules on center pipes in the center of the roofs going into the streets, into the soil line? What are we doing on that?
So center roof drains, like you mentioned, that are tied into the sanitary system, and sump pumps that are tied into the sanitary system are both prohibited connections per city code. You can't discharge roof runoff or sump pump groundwater water into the sanitary sewer system. So as we go through each of these combined sewer separation projects, we do building inspections and smoke testing to identify those types of situations. And as we move into construction, what we're offering to residents is a cost-sharing program. If they were to take advantage of that, we would work with them and split the cost 50-50 to remove those sources of inflow to the sanitary sewer system. So what that essentially means is residents within these areas of construction can go get a quote from a plumber or contractor or otherwise, and then the city will work with them to split that cost 50-50 to try to remove those sources. We haven't gone so far as to strictly enforce these things and give people a timeline for removal, but we will need to do that at some point in the very near future. The goal, I think, would be to remove all of those, identify and remove those sources of inflow into the sanitary system by the year 2030. And we're already here in 2024, so we've got 6 years. So that's kind of a moving target, but that's something that we're looking to address as we work through these combined sewer separation projects.
My question to you is, I brought it up before when I was telling Mr. McNamara, we had back in 2000, when did I start? 2013, Marcus? 2013? When we had the big, when we had 600 houses on the auction block.
13, yep.
And what I was really amazed at, what we didn't do as a city, since we knew about this water problem, and we had a vast majority of multifamily houses on the auction block that were being sold cheap money on a dollar, very cheap money on a dollar, that we didn't say to these people that were buying it that they would be mandated to take these center drains and pump them out while they were fixing up and renovating these houses. That I couldn't understand the logic. When you were buying a multifamily house for $25,000 at that time, they were giving them away. And we didn't want to enforce the rules. I always had a hard time to understand that. And you know, and I don't blame you, but I blame all of us. Because I'll use me for an example. I have a multifamily house. Nobody ever told me about my set of drains.
Counselor, there's been a point of order raised.
We're just getting way far afield from the actual sewer separation project, and we've got a lot to get through tonight.
I understand that, Mr. President. Well, Mr. Counselor, Mr. President, I understand that. What we're talking about, $39.5 million. We're talking a $250 million bill that I and the residents of this city are going to have to pay for the next 50 years.
You're correct, sir, but you're going into now multifamily home development.
Well, I'm giving an example
I
because
understand where you're going with it, but
I'm giving an example that we're not doing our job as a city, and we could have saved the city money.
well,
That's what I'm saying.
understood. But let's try to stick with the sewer separation consent decree line of.
All right, the other thing I want to talk to you, Nick, you already know how I feel about it. I do not believe in the 7 miles that we're doing on this sewer separation, that if you dig up like you did Main Street and you dug up the street, you should just be patching that and not going curb to curb. I'm totally against that. I keep on saying it to you that I think it's absolutely wrong to do it. I think that's the DPW's job to pave the roads out there with the funds that we get from the state or the city to chip in, not the ratepayer to pay for the roads. I use Clarendon Street. I told you this before, I used the Clarence Street as an example. It was $380,000 to do what they did. They paved the center road. It's costing us $1.4 million to fix that road with sidewalks, take $500,000 off, that's $1 million. We saved $600,000 these guys don't have to pay for curb to curb. That's how I look at it. I don't see the logic of why I am paying, or the ratepayers paying, to pave the roads with water. And the bill never goes away. The bill's there for the next 50 years.
So just to speak to that a little bit, with Clarendon Street, $400,000 of that combined sewer separation project went towards paving. So every time there's a combined sewer separation project, money goes towards paving. This is
Right.
no different. The benefit here is that all of these loans are very low interest, 2%, with principal forgiveness that's on average at least 9.9%, sometimes more, depending on how well funded the state is at any given year in their plan. So we're adding in 7 miles of curb-to-curb paving into this project to cover roads that would be completely blown apart by sewer installations and drain installations. Not just one utility, so not just one trench, but 2 trenches. And then in addition to that, all of the catch basins, all of the manholes. By the time you're done with those installations, you're left with a road that basically is completely torn apart. I mean, look at Clarendon Street. It's an absolute mess. So we're able to add 7 miles of paving into this project at a 2% interest rate with principal forgiveness on the back end. If the city were to entertain some sort of a debt exclusion and borrow the money otherwise, you wouldn't come close to that interest rate and you wouldn't have any principal forgiveness. So this is a way for us to supplement our Chapter 90 paving in a big way and get 7 miles of paving done in one of the hardest sections of the city to work in because it's so tight and narrow and hilly. I really think this is a win for the city. And just to point out, wastewater is part of DPW. So in the end, DPW as a whole is still doing the paving work.
I would argue, too, that the ratepayers would not be opposed to fixing the roads once they're torn up.
A lot of these roads.
We all know that the people in the city love our condition of our roads. So.
A lot of these roads, too, are years beyond the design life of the asphalt that's installed.
Yep.
Unitil's already blown them apart. Water Department's already blown them apart in many instances. So for us to go in and install a permanent trench patch for the sewer and drain installations, you're trying to tie new pavement into existing pavement that just is essentially non-existent. Like, as you're saw cutting, pavement's just crumbling around it. So how far back do you go? By the time you chase that crumbling pavement back to something that's actually structurally sound and that you could tie into, you're already at the curb line anyways. So we're really not doing that much above and beyond permanent trench restoration. I mean, think about a sewer line and then a drain line. So you're talking, 10 feet plus 10 feet, and then catch basins and manholes, which are a roughly 10 by 10 hole scattered, throughout the street. You're really digging up the entire thing anyways. So paving curb to curb really isn't any additional cost above and beyond doing a permanent trench patch.
So are we going, when you do that work, I don't know, you're going to raise your hand again. You're going to raise the curbs too, then? The curbing will get raised when he's paving? Are we going to do that too?
Depends on how invasive the catch basin, drainage, sanitary sewer installations are. A lot of times you end up going into the sidewalk in order to construct that stuff. So in those areas where we have the opportunity to raise the curbing, we'll absolutely do so. In other areas where we're not changing the alignment of the sidewalk, we're not going to be changing the elevations of the curbs. What we could do is mill to a greater depth depending on the thickness of the pavement that's out there. So if we have a road that's been paved over and over and over for years and years to the point that there's no curb reveal and we've got a solid 8 to 12 inches of pavement, we can mill a little extra to get that curb reveal back and then pave it so that you've got a final finished curb reveal of 6 inches or so. And in those areas, we'll definitely look at doing that. The nitty-gritty of all that hasn't really been flushed out yet. I mean, these things are just entering design right now. So we'll work to finalize those details over the next little bit.
All right.
So just to summarize, we have probably will be spending, let's exclude the tertiary 50 million because we don't know yet. outside of that, we're talking between 250 and 300 million when all is said and done?
Oh, 250.
About 250.
Yep,
And that doesn't include the 50 million tertiary.
correct.
And we're looking at this going well into 2036 in terms of all the reeval. So this nightmare continues for 12 more years at least. And I call it a nightmare because I think the public understands what we're trying to do, what we're trying to accomplish. It's a worthy and necessary environmental action in terms of separating our stormwater from our, to lessen the outflow in peak times into the river. No one disagrees that. The issue has been the sticker shock on the public for how much this has costed them, because we started in 2012, well, the decree was signed in 2012. This has been about 10 years so far. And I remember that first tranche of money, the rates went up 68% right away. And ever since, they've gone up beyond that. And I agree with my colleague. I'm not insinuating once this is finished, the rates are going to plummet. I don't think anyone's under that impression. What I was saying is that if the rates are based off of built-in costs that we're no longer going to consume, then there should be an adjustment to the rates, or justification to the ratepayers that we sold the rate increase based on X. Now that we're not doing X, here's a lot of other things we do need to do with this kind of an infrastructure to justify keeping the rates as is. And I hope we have that discussion in the future. And we don't just raise the rates based on, rationale that no longer applies. Right. So that's all I'm, prepared for, because the public understands what we're trying to accomplish. What they don't like is a federal agency that doesn't have any stake here telling them you can afford all this, because that's what the EPA has basically said to us. You guys can afford it, because they make $500,000 a year up there, and our residents are just flush with cash. They don't know what to do with it. So they say, you know what, charge me more. That's why I love D.C.
Easy. Mr.
Very
Mayor.
easy for them to put these mandates on a community
Point of
with
order.
no funding.
Point of order.
So,
Off topic.
well, it's on topic, just like the MS4. This all combines itself, because when it's easy for people to make decisions when they don't have the bill. Okay? No one's against what we're trying to do. We're against the fact that they came here and they said on high, your residents can afford all this. I'd love to see the residents respond to that, because DC knows best.
And your point's well taken. I mean, if there's a $50 million project that just drops off, future rate increases will absolutely take that into consideration. We wouldn't borrow money for a $50 million project that we don't need to do and raise rates accordingly. So I think once we get to the point in our rate cycle where we're reevaluating the need for rate increases, we'll take a look at all of the projects on the horizon, ones that have dropped off, ones that have been added on, future O&M costs and all that, and decide on those rate increases accordingly. If there's no need to raise the rates in 5 years, we won't raise the rates. And it's purely going to be based on the numbers. There's no hoarding cash, really, that we have any intention of doing.
I believe our constituency is very logical-minded, where they will understand increases if it directly benefits them in the infrastructure, just like the water rates we've seen. If it means I'm going to get cleaner water, faster service, I'll pay for it. They want to see it.
Right.
Unfortunately, in the world of wastewater, they hit the flush button and they don't think anything of it. They don't know how it works. Water they bathe in, they drink, they use for their yard. Sewer, you guys get the short end of the stick. Everything goes out of the house.
We are always
Right.
been that way,
So-
and we don't mind it.
Right.
But the DEP and the EPA, they are very happy with what the city of Fitchburg has been doing. Before 2012, we had a bad reputation out there, not just in the regulatory fields, but other wastewater treatment plants always used us as an example. Since that point, they're using us as an example of what communities should be doing. And so when we go before the EPA and the DEP, they work with us.
Are they going to jackboot those other communities like they did us?
I don't know.
I'm just curious. Yeah, okay. Well, I'm glad we're the guinea pigs.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve.
051?
051.
I lost my place. 05124. Any discussions on the motion?
No, I said it all.
No discussion. I'll take this under unanimous consent. Seeing none, it passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
5224. Actually should read.
The Warming Center.
That's why I didn't see it, because the number was different. 5224, order to approve the expenditure of grant funds from the Board of Health from the United Way of North Central Massachusetts in the amount of $2,000 to supplement the Winter Warming Center. Director Curry, is this the center on Mechanic Street?
Correct.
Okay. 76 Mechanic?
Correct.
Is it? Okay. The one that we just recently opened this past winter.
Right.
Yep.
We were open 19 evenings and 2 days in extreme weather conditions. This would continue the operation should it be needed in the near future. Pretty straightforward request. Not much to discuss. Questions?
Council Boschman.
How are we making out? Is it helping?
Well, I think that it exposes our unhoused population and those in need to coming to a warm location and getting a taste of or talking with folks that can help them if they wish to be helped to get to the services that they need. So I think the person-to-person contact, I think helps for sure. Absolutely.
Do you have any numbers? Can you produce any numbers?
I can. We opened 19 nights, as I mentioned, 2 days. A total of 52 guests have stayed over the past 8 weeks. The highest night census was 29 folks. As I stated, these folks were connected to services and received assistance in filling out applications and those needed services. 26 people went to the SMOC shelter. 18 went to a detox facility. 20 received state IDs through a collaboration with the sheriff's office. In January and February, 8 males and 6 females were referred to the SMOC shelter as well, just January alone. So that is part of the 26 folks. So I think the numbers are showing that these folks are utilizing, not all, but a lot of folks are utilizing services. You can't help someone that doesn't want to be helped.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
I understand that wholeheartedly. Now, there was, you said, how many? 18 went to the SMOC shelter?
26.
26 went there.
18 to a...
Now, how long are they allowed to stay? Is it a day or a week or a month?
The SMOC shelter is a permanent shelter as long as they follow the rules
As long as they follow the rules.
and follow the program.
All right. Because the reason why I asked these questions, I was talking to somebody, and I was reading an article in the Wall Street Journal, I believe, or the Boston Globe, or one of the other, Wall Street Journal, and it's talking about addiction and treatment and can work even if it's not voluntary. And what they're doing in different other communities is that they're doing the same thing, basically what you're doing. But what they're doing is they're laying down the law and they're saying that either you want to get help or you don't. And if you don't want to get help, then you're going to do one or two things. If you get caught with drugs, you're going to get busted and you're going to go off to jail, and then you're going to go get help. Or second of all, if you don't want to do that, then you can't stay, you're going to move on. And that's what they're saying here.
Right. Well, that's done out in the field, but that's a difficult thing to do when it's 6 degrees outside and there's nowhere to lay your head. So
Yeah, I understand that.
This is just a center for when we have a winter emergency.
Right.
That requires
Correct.
warmth. And I would assume in the hot summer days, this would probably be a cooling center?
That's quite possible.
Okay.
I'm not sure that would be well attended, but
Okay, yeah.
something to explore and think about for sure.
Because I know the Salvation Army on Water Street, they provide
They do.
a warming area. I think beforehand, we were providing the senior center here and there, but that was probably just a temporary spot. But now that we have this location, we can
Well,
relieve them.
this location is likely temporary, too.
Okay.
I think we're going to have to go back to the drawing board after April. I suspect that the Housing Authority is going to be rehabbing that property very shortly, so.
For now, thank you to the United Way of North Central
Exactly.
Mass for their generous donation to the city for this effort.
I give it to
President Zarella?
Just two things. First, I just want to, I was going to ask, but you explained it already, and I want to express my appreciation for the fact that we're not just operating this as, a single-purpose facility, but tying it in with all of the opportunities for service so that people aren't just coming out of the cold and then going back out again. They're, getting linked with people who can get them a more long-term solution. The other thing I just wanted to ask, just to put things in perspective, is about what, as a percentage or just as sort of a what is this by us, how much of the operating costs of the facility will this assist with?
So, it's about $2,000 a month to use the facility. If we don't use it, we won't receive an invoice. If there is just a small amount of use, we will receive a smaller invoice based on the rate per month. It's about $2,000 for
Okay.
use.
So this basically pays for a month of
This
use?
could take care of an entire month if,
Oh, that's great.
yeah.
That's great. Yeah, just wanted to be able to kind of put that in perspective.
In perspective, yeah.
For myself and for the public. No, I think that's great.
Make a motion.
Councilor Walsh.
Oh,
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to commend Mr. Curry and his staff. I know Sue Christensen and Keith Barnaby have been at the...
Lou Christensen's the all-star and the brainchild behind this one,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, and I know that she...
Can't take
works-
much credit for this.
I know that she's been there nights and weekends and all of that, so I know that her job is
Dedicated a
not
lot to
9 to
her
5.
personal time
Yeah.
to run this thing. So it's been very interesting and a learning experience.
Yeah, so tip of the hat to all of your staff, including Sue.
make a motion, we accept, and I want you to say thank you to Susan. And I'm not
Appreciate that.
soft yet.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve 05224. Any objections? It is taken with unanimous consent and passed. Thank you.
Thank you.
5324, the City of Fitchburg approves the expenditure of state earmark funds allocated by the Department of Conservation and Recreation in the amount of $75,000 to the rehabilitation of the youth soccer field area at Coolidge Park. Director Bunnell.
Hello. Thank you for having me. This is a state earmark. I come before you, so hopefully you accept it, for $75,000 for Coolidge Park. Right now, Fitchburg Youth Soccer has been using Coolidge Park for a very long time. They just use the area. There's no real dedicated space, and what this will do will start the process of providing them a dedicated space, and once they have that we could work on fixing up inside that space. Because right now, with no fenced-in area, the easiest way from point A to B is a straight line. So when people need to go to the dog park, sometimes they don't walk all the way around, they just walk across the field. Or if they need to use, go to the pool or a softball field on that side, they take the easiest route possible. So this will give Fitchburg Youth Soccer a dedicated space to have their fields.
Councilor Boschman.
Are you telling me that down there, we're going to put fences around different play areas? So it'll be like a prison, you have a fence over here, and a fence over here, and a fence over here, and a fence over here? You know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm saying? I understand what the soccer field is. You come way at the end, you go around the track, it's way at the end down there.
Yeah.
Has to be by Fitchburg, the university softball field.
Correct.
In that area. Are you planning on fencing that whole area in?
Not the whole area, a good-sized portion of the area. Also, a project that'll be going on this spring, summer, the softball field one, the softball field closest to John Fitch Highway, the field that doesn't have a fence, that'll be fenced in as well. Usually fields are fenced in. That's just a nature of it.
I understand the baseball fields, but I never thought that we would put a fence around the soccer field. Because you're also going to have down there, what's that thing they want to put down there, Mark? Is the weightlifting thing?
That'll not be fenced in.
That's not, I know it's not the same thing, but that's going down there, near there, in that vicinity.
Correct, but that's not going to be fenced in.
That's not going to be fenced.
No, if you look at other neighboring communities, whether it's a town or a city, like Leominster Youth Soccer, to use them as an example, their main soccer facility is completely fenced in. You go to Lunenburg next door, where their youth soccer program uses the high school, middle school fields. It's all fenced in. Usually, any place that you go, for the most part, I would say more often than not, an athletic facility, whether it's a soccer field, baseball field, field hockey field, is fenced in. I mean, you go down the street to look at Nikitas Field, there's a fence around it. You go up into Westminster at Oakmont Regional, you're going to see fencing around their fields. It's just easier to maintain and control somewhat that area that is being used for athletics.
We're not going to spend the whole $75,000 on fence, are we? And not improve the grounds at all? The grounds are kind of rough. Would you say the grounds are kind of rough? I would say they're kind of rough.
You could say that of pretty much about any grass field, wherever you go, for the most part. Unless you have a very large budget, a grass field is going to get used and torn up. But if you, again, go back to my point of containing and fencing in an area, you're reducing that traffic and unnecessary use on a particular area that would be used for that sport. I mean, you're still going to have, I hope that the quotes and when it comes back in, that it doesn't cost all $75,000, but that's for the material and the installation of the product. If there's money left over, then there'll be more that'll go towards the improvement of that area. But the main goal was to block off an area and then go from there.
All right. I yield the floor.
Yeah, I think this is long overdue because the youth soccer organization has had complaints before about, even during games, people crisscrossing over. And in their defense, the regular public, they don't know where the boundaries are because it's wide out in the open. There are many communities that have strictly fields that are soccer only, but they're fenced in still, and then there are areas that have delineation. So, like the basketball courts at Coolidge, they're not fenced in. The only fenced-in areas are a couple of the ball fields. Actually, the Fitchburg State softball field, one ball field over by the playground, and then you've got the 3 hockey rinks. That's pretty much it. I mean, this would delineate a space for the soccer leagues and give a dedicated space for those who are soccer enthusiasts, and I think it's long overdue, and I don't think it'll cause any disruption to the park itself because most people use the walking trail around and the playground and the dog park, and then, you know, your sporting events that are delineated already with the softball, baseball, and the street hockey. So this is a state earmark, so this will start the process of improving that area, and in order to start improving that area within, you've got to start at the base, the border. So that's what this will address, and it makes sense to me. So.
And just to reiterate your point, Councilor, before I arrived in this position, it's from my understanding that work had been done in that particular spot to try to rehab the grass and the grounds. However, with nothing to protect it, it ended up where we are today.
It's not even about protection. I remember many years ago on the council when the DPW was before us for CDBG money or for what have you to do parks and playground improvements, short of having a monumental investment in turf, you're going to get very few years out of a rehabbed grass area.
Correct.
Because it'll just get dug up, and with our weather the way it is, it does hell to the grass. So for right now, the kids need a dedicated space to perform the soccer activities, since baseball, softball, street hockey have their dedicated spaces, so that would just make sense to do that there.
And also, too, it's not going to be looking like a prison either. We're getting nice black fencing. There's not going to be barbed wire and a whole bunch of other fun stuff on there. We are making it aesthetically pleasing to the eye.
I think it would also, something like that would also improve membership with the league as well.
Yes.
Because right now, if you go to Coolidge Park, you don't know that that's a soccer field.
Correct.
I mean, you see kids kicking a soccer ball around, you'd assume it's just a wide open field and they're just kicking the ball around. They don't know that there's actually a soccer section here for us to use. Okay, so it's marketing too, if you ask me.
And I have been working with Fitchburg Youth Soccer and their president, Mr. Cosgrove, about how we're going to orient and the amount of area that is needed so that they're still able to keep however many fields they are, plus with their trailer, and provide access with gates and things like that, so that it is a functional, aesthetically pleasing space for not only the community, but for Fitchburg Youth Soccer as well.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any objections?
No objection from me.
Seeing none, it passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Jim.
05424, approve the transfer of $96,349 from CDBG Year 47 Police Department ADA parking improvements to CDBG Year 48 Parks Playgrounds improvements. Director Murphy.
Good evening. Elizabeth Murphy. I'm the Director of Community Development and Planning. Thank you for letting me speak on this today. We do have funds that were allocated a couple of years ago to make accessible parking spaces at the police department. It was intended to be part of a larger redevelopment project or rehab project of the police station. That's not moving forward as it was planned. I can't really speak to what is moving forward because I don't have the answers to that. So I'm just going to put that out there now. But we can't just let this money sit forever until we figure out what's happening. So we need to reprogram it, and we do have a shortfall in funding that we need to complete the Park Hill Park and Mama Fitz Park improvements. So we would like to reallocate this $96,000 and change to that project.
I got no problem with that.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the transfer. There are no objections. It is approved. Last but not least, we'll move on to the Community Development Block Grant Year 50 funding recommendation. And this has already gone through the public hearings of the Planning Board, the Mayor's review, and now it's before the Council for final approval. And councilors, just as I've done in the past, we will allow the committee to ask questions of anyone in the audience who is here regarding a specific matter, if there are questions to be asked. We will not take individual comment on what these will do because you've already done that in public session. So folks that are here on behalf of any of these appropriations are here to answer questions you may have. If not, we will act accordingly. I will just read quickly the Year 50 estimated funding. Estimated community development block grant funds available for Year 50, 2024 to 2025 are as follows. Year 50 estimated entitlement amount to be determined. This figure may fluctuate pending budget approval from Congress. Year 49 entitlement was $949,218.54. Program income was $950. Reprogram funds $7,372.64, and then CDBG HRL $30,000. So the total estimated funds available for Year 50 is $955,157.64 against a total amount of requests totaling $1,735,117.80. And as I've done in the past, since these are in components, we have the final list for our perusal and approval is public facilities and improvements, 7 projects for $304,401. Public Services, 9 projects, $137,500. Economic Development, 4 projects, $172,256.64. Rehabilitation and Preservation, 3 projects for $151,000. And Planning and Administration, 1 project, $190,000. And those 5 sections total the $955,158. So if there are no objections, we will take these in those components. So I will begin with Public Facilities and Improvements. There are, it says 7 projects. 1, 2, 3.
5, actually.
There's 5.
Yeah, number 55 to 59. Yeah, but
Okay, so is it in order?
yeah, I think they are in order.
So these first 5. Okay.
Which one's Micah's?
So it goes in order according
Oh,
to
does it go in
the auditor.
order,
So
yeah?
the first Public Facilities and Improvements is 5 projects for $304,000. So the first project, so Project A, ADA crosswalk improvements on Electric Avenue and Deerfield Road. Department of Public Works is the sponsor. Requested $50,000, recommendation $50,000. Project B, ADA crosswalk improvements on John Fitch Highway and Pearl Street. Department of Public Works requested $100,000 was requested, $83,651 was recommended. Project C, City Park signs replacements requested by the Parks and Recreation Department. The request was for $12,000, recommended was $12,000. Project D, Outdoor Fitness Center and Outdoor Fitness Studio installation, sponsored by the Parks and Recreation Department, requested $20,000, recommended $20,000.
I'm not sure if we're on the right,
Oh, did I just go?
I'm not sure.
Okay, so my apologies already. This says public improvements and facilities, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
May I? There's a couple that have been combined. The 2 ADA projects have been combined into one line item.
Oh, they've been combined.
And then the 2, the 12,000 and the 20,000 for parks are combined into one line item for 32.
Okay, so the reason why there was some confusion is there's 10 letters. There's 10 projects under public facilities and improvements, according to the package that I have. Yeah, it says 7 proposals for $304,401.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
I think the solution here is that 3 of the proposals don't appear not to have been accepted, so that would be 10 total, 7 actually for us to vote on.
I see, okay. You're correct, sir. Okay. Yeah, okay, I got ahead of myself. So there are 7 approved projects, recommended projects under public facilities and improvements. It's the first 2 pages, Counselor.
Yeah, I understand that.
Okay,
I
one
understand
second.
the thing. I got a question.
And the top of the 3rd page.
In the top of the 3rd page. So let me go through this again. My apologies, everybody. Public facilities and improvements. There are 7 recommended projects totaling $304,401. Project 1, ADA crosswalk improvements on Electric Ave and Deerfield Road, sponsored DPW. Requested $50,000, recommended $50,000. Project B, ADA crosswalk improvements on John Fitch Highway and Pearl Street, sponsored DPW. Requested $100,000, recommended $83,651. Project C, City Park sign replacement, sponsored by the Parks and Recreation Department. Requested $12,000, recommended $12,000. Project D, Outdoor Fitness Center and Outdoor Fitness Studio installation. Sponsor, Parks and Recreation Department. Requested $20,000, recommended $20,000. Project G, Streetscapes Community Development. Sponsor, requested $100,000, recommended $100,000. Project I, Phoenix Building Entrances and Historic Facades. Sponsor, Fitchburg Historical Society. Requested $6,250. Recommended $6,250. And finally, Project J, Crocker Field handrails, benches, and steel painting, sponsored by the public schools. Requested $32,500. Recommended $32,500. Those are the 7 projects under public facilities and improvements. Are there any questions from committee members on any of those 7 projects? Councilor Boschman.
Yeah, a question for the Public Works. Oh, Liz Murphy, I don't care who answers the question. Are we farming it out, or are we keeping it in-house on the ADA ramps and that?
The goal would be to farm it out. So with the John Fitch Highway crosswalk improvements in particular, we'll see how far that $83,000 gets us. We might have to chop off 1 or 2 of those crosswalks depending on bid prices that we receive. But the goal is to farm it out because we're in a situation where DPW's got enough maintenance work that they're behind on and need to get caught up on. So having a contractor come in would allow these projects to get done more effectively and efficiently.
One question. I'll go along with you, but I like to get this in my head because I know I'm a union guy. I like to keep things in-house. I know you and I had our differences, especially on Elm Street, and I was kind of upset with the potholes, and we did the sidewalk, and we spent months on it, and I didn't think it was right, and that's when I started to change my way to the opposite way, to farm it out. Can we do it a lot cheaper if we kept it in-house? Realistically, counting labor and cost, can we do it a lot cheaper if we kept it in-house?
It would be cheaper. I don't have exact figures prepared for you, but I would say we could probably do it 50% cheaper on average. We have our own guys in-house. We're just buying materials at that point, and we're doing the work within normal business hours. If we were to try to accelerate it and get it done on overtime, so night or weekend work, then the cost starts to come more in line with a private contractor because you're talking about paying guys either time and a half or double time if it's on a Sunday. So, contractor costs include paying all of their guys plus on average 15% overhead in profit. So there's definitely an added expense by going outside.
All right. And the only reason, can I ask this question, Mr. Chair? What's the main reason why we're so far behind on everything? I know we got the city's old and we got a lot of work.
That's a budget question.
That's what?
That's a budget question.
That's a budget
Can we
question.
reserve that till
Sheer
budget?
volume of work that's outstanding versus the limited number of people relatively that we have on DPW staff. I mean, you're talking about 220 miles of roadway, 180 of that's public, and then sidewalks and all that.
Not to cut you off, but we've heard this from you like a broken record for as long as you've been commissioner and your predecessors. There will never be enough men in the DPW to do what we need to do. Never. Period. I mean, you give him 5 extra guys, he's going to need 5 extra guys on top of that. 180 miles of roadway in this city, potholes, drainage, trees, brush. Unless we have someone who's dedicated to every street in the city, we're never going to get caught up. So, I mean, I think that's a question for budget session. Here is an avenue where the DPW has long utilized CDBG funds to supplement what they cannot handle because of the massive backlog that they have. And while their staff has generally increased over the years, it's nowhere close to where it needs to be. But I would rather our guy, it's either you pay a little extra to have them take care of it outside and then have our guys focus on internal stuff or not. I mean, it comes out to me in the end a wash, whether you go outside or inside. Because as the commissioner said, you got to pay more for this, so I'm not going to get into it, but we've heard many times already the statements he just made about why they're behind, what they've got to do. That's a budget question that we'll discuss. This is CDBG. The key here, sir, is Do you approve of the work being recommended or not? Irrespective of who's doing
I
it.
understand what you're saying wholeheartedly, but I like to keep, as much as I complain, I like to keep the work in-house. I wouldn't want you guys to work Sunday and get double time to do it. I wouldn't want that.
Understood, Counsel, but this is a meeting to discuss whether we as a council agree with the recommendation that these ADA improvements to these two areas are necessary and required in our estimation.
My question to him, Mr. Chair, is this. My question to him, can we do it cheaper on overtime, not counting Sunday?
So,
that's my question.
Counselor, your question has nothing to do with the appropriated funds for the purpose.
He's going to farm it out. It has something to do with it.
I'll go even further then. Your question's already been answered by the mayor, who agreed to put this forward for us for a recommendation. So she doesn't believe that that's the right course of action, nor does the planning board. And that's really ultimately who you should be asking that question of. The commissioner is not solely making that decision. It stops with the mayor. This went through the mayor's office. She appropriated this or recommended this. That's a question about resource allocation. That is her in conjunction with the commissioner, not us. And if they don't use all this $50,000 because they decide later on to go internal, then that money will get reprogrammed to something else. But for right now, the commissioner, based on his workload, his assessment of the staff, because it's not going to change in the next 6 months, this is the course of action he wishes to take, and his superior has agreed to that.
One of the benefits of farming the work out is getting it done in a timely fashion too. So all of these proposed improvements have been hanging out there as to-do items for years and years and years. DPW hasn't gotten to them. So by giving it to a contractor, we're basically saying, all right, we're going to get this done. We're going to get it done in the short term versus waiting and waiting and waiting until DPW has time to actually do it. The Elm Street courthouse sidewalks were a perfect example of that. You know, we were out there for 3 months trying to get that done. If you had a contractor come in, they could have blasted that in a week or two. And the timing was unfortunate because we started the work, then we got that huge rainstorm at the end of July 16th, I think it was. And then we spent the next 2 months trying to catch up from that by doing all the drainage repairs and road repairs. So we set ourselves up for failure in a sense because we take on these CDBG projects. We say, yep, we're going to plan to do it between May and June of this year, and we get the best laid plans, but then we get whacked with a rainstorm, and we've got to shift our focus and put all that stuff on the back burner. And then the people that want to see these projects done are like, what the heck is the DPW doing? They started this project, they ripped everything up, and they haven't been back here for 2 months. So this is a way to address some of that.
So thank you for mentioning the timing aspect. That's the other big piece of this, is that it's going to take a lot quicker for the outside contractor to do this than your guys, not because they're slower, but because they've got 7,000 other things to do. And when we put in pothole requests or drainage issues, and then the residents are like, why isn't it getting done? That's why we have to pull these guys away from these projects to go take care of those things, because they're more pressing to what we've been seeking. So I'm not saying your question isn't valid, but this discussion should be centered around the merits of the project and not how it's going to get delineated, because we don't have control over delineation. We only have control over the amount, and if we don't use that amount, it goes somewhere else. But in terms of resource allocation, that is between the commissioner and the mayor, who has already put this forward, and therefore I would believe that she agrees with this course of action the commissioner wishes to take. So I will say that the Electric Ave and Old Deerfield Road section, that was a petition that I put in, I want to say over 2 years ago.
Right, 2 years ago.
I remember it was Miss Slattery with her daughter and family. And you were gracious enough, sir, in the meeting to, the committee approved it, the council approved it, and you mentioned at that time that we're going to look for CDBG money for this. And I'll be sure to tell Miss Slattery tonight, it's after 2 years of waiting, it's finally come to fruition. So I thank you for, tackling this personally, because that was one of my initiatives, and I'm glad to see it's on this list. So it's
Joint Fitch Highway was last year.
Excuse me?
Joint Fitch Highway was last year.
Okay.
And I'm not questioning your ability, don't get me wrong. I'm not questioning. But the only thing I wanted to see, if you keep the people happy in the workforce, then it makes a big difference. And sometimes they work a little bit harder and faster. You don't know. You know what I mean?
Counselor, It's
All right.
understood, but that statement assumes that they've already got more than enough to do, is the point.
I do also want to add, we used to have our guys do CDBG work because during the budgeting period, we were always starting off $100,000
Right.
negative, and we needed to earn that $100,000 by conducting grant work such as CDBG work. So there was a necessity in order to balance the DPW budget to do that. We don't have that situation anymore, so we're not required to make up that $100,000 in any way. So we can have our guys focus on the C-click fixes and the petitions, and we can contract out stuff like this that comes up, like the capital improvements, sidewalks, crosswalks, et cetera.
And I will just say one last thing about this, and I know we got to keep moving here, but just on that note, there are many instances that you can recall where our guys have done the work that we would normally contract out. Paving is an example. Okay, there's been a lot of projects in the city where we could have farmed it out. We didn't. We had our guys internally do it. So it's a pick your poison situation. It's also let the commissioner run the department the way he sees fit in conjunction with his superior, and it's a case-by-case basis. President Zarella?
I'll just say, the way I see it is, and again, I think the project needs to go forward one way or the other, and I agree. It's not really for us to decide exactly where the money comes from or, what the most efficient way to spend it is, as long as we approve of it being spent on this. But to me, I think it's kind of like why people, pay for a yearly yard cleanup, or why some plumbers and electricians I know have other plumbers and electricians come in and do their work in their house. Because, you can clean your own yard for the cost of trash bags and gas, or you can pay someone to come in. But if you're also working 5 days a week, taking care of kids, keeping up the rest of the house, doing, family obligations of all sorts, you may not have time to go out and spend the 4 or 5 hours that it would take one person to clean up their yard. So you pay someone to come in. It's more expensive. You could do it cheaper yourself, but it needs to get done, and you don't have time to do it. So you bring someone in. It makes perfect sense to me. That said, I will make a motion that we approve the block of public facilities and improvements items for the CDBG year 50.
Second.
So the way these votes have been conducted in the past, just so everybody knows, is that when there is a motion to do it in a block, a committee member can ask for one or however many be taken out of that block. It's like a committee report, if you will. And then we'll have a separate vote on just that piece that was pulled out of the block. But if no one wants to do that, we'll take it as a block. So unless you object to having a block of one vote for the whole package, speak now and say, I want to pull X out and vote yes or no on that.
Oh, we're going to vote on the whole package right now?
We're going to vote on the first section.
Oh, I get no problem with
Of
it.
public facilities
Yeah,
and improvements.
I'm all in
I was
favor
just
of it.
saying that if there's
I was
one
just asking
project.
I was just asking
Yeah,
the
if there's
question.
one of the 7 projects or more that you want to specifically pull out of that block
No.
to have a separate vote on,
No,
you
it's
can
not.
do that. But
It's not,
since
I
no
agree
one.
with them all.
Okay, so the motion has been made and seconded to approve the public facilities and improvements, the 7 projects as recommended for $304,401. If there are no objections to that motion, I will take this under unanimous consent. Seeing no objection, public facilities improvements for $304,401 for those 7 projects is approved by this committee. Next, we'll move on to public services. 9 projects totaling $137,500. They are Project K, Street Outreach, sponsor, Board of Health, request $20,000, recommended $20,000. Project L, Fitchburg Farmers Market, Growing Places Garden Project, Inc., sponsor, requested $7,324.80, recommended $7,000. Project M, Spartacus, sponsor, YMCA of Central Massachusetts, Montechusett Community Branch, requested $25,000, recommended $12,000. Project N, Drug Enforcement and Foot Patrol Program, Sponsor, Fitchburg Police Department. Requested $60,000, recommended $60,000. Project O, Family Homeless Shelter, North Star Family Services. Sponsor, requested $10,000, recommended $9,500. Project P, Homelessness Prevention. Sponsor, Community Legal Aid. Requested $20,000, recommended $5,000. Project R, Transportation STEAM, Boys and Girls Club of Fitchburg and Leominster. Sponsor, requested $67,500, recommended $14,000. Project S, Mayor's Energy Fund. Sponsor, Mayor's Office. Requested $25,000, recommended $5,000. Lastly, Project T, Serving Fitchburg Through Partnership. Sponsor, Spanish American Center. Requested $15,000, recommended $5,000. Those are the 9 projects for $137,500. Any questions from the committee on the
Before
block?
we start.
Yes.
I want to pull, so if you're going to go by a block, I want to pull S.
Counselor, we won't pull it out right now.
Yeah.
We'll wait until
Okay.
motion is made, and then you can make your request to pull.
Okay.
Right now, the committee can ask any questions on those 9 projects.
All right, I got one question.
Counselor Boschman.
I got one question, hold on. Community aid. Is there anybody here from community aid, no?
Community Legal Aid.
Yeah. I ask this question every year, and I want to make sure that I understand it correctly.
Absolutely.
You also work with the landlords, don't you? Or is it just a one-way street?
So we represent tenants in eviction cases and also in subsidy termination cases as well. However, in our eviction cases, we really work with the landlords and tenants together to come up with solutions that are positive for both. So we really connect tenants with different financial resources so that it can help them catch up with rent payments. Even in terms of moving, it helps them cover first, last, and security deposit so that they don't have that big chunk of money to move into some affordable housing as well. But really, we try to work together with landlords. A large majority of our cases settle in mediation. It's very rare that it becomes an adversarial process. Sometimes it does, but we really try to prevent that because we really want to maintain strong relationships between landlords and tenants and keep both sides happy.
Okay, that's all I'm concerned.
Please state your name for the record.
Sure, it's Inez Kenny, and I'm the managing attorney of the Fitchburg office for Community Legal Aid.
What's your first name?
It's Inez, it's spelled I-N-E-S, and last name is Kenny, K-E-N-N-E-Y.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
President Zarella?
I just wanted to confirm, it's been a long time since I've done work in legal aid, but that is the way they all operate. It's, try to work with the landlords where you can, but just to be clear, the legal aid organizations aren't permitted to actually represent landlords. It's not part of their funding stream. That's not something that these guys have any control over. But
Down to here, that's the end.
in any legal
Ones that
case,
don't have zero.
if you can find a solution that makes both sides happy, it's always easier.
Absolutely.
No one wants to go to court if they don't have to. So
Exactly. And these people are
including us.
right, and they have to have a good working relationship. You don't want to, you don't want to have a landlord that you're not that you don't have a positive relationship with. You don't want to have a tenant that you don't have a positive relationship with. So we really try to maintain those relationships when we are working with tenants.
Okay. And that's my biggest concern. I just don't want it to be one side.
Counsel Walsh?
Thank you. I just wanted to comment that in my work with Senator Cronin's office, I know that we refer numerous people to you, and you're always very helpful. So thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for the Community Legal Aid sponsored item? Me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions from the committee on any of the other projects under the subject matter, public services?
One quick question.
Counsel?
Maybe Liz, I don't want to disrupt the young man in the back there, North Star. How many people from Fitchburg? How many people from Fitchburg?
You talking about last year or this year?
From the house in there. Is-
Could you please state your name, sir, and your organization?
John Hogue, North Star Family Services. Generally, it's a 50-50 split, but on any given time, it could be more Fitchburg or more Leominster. We prioritize both. I've said this, many, many years. We all know. It depends on the families, We definitely have a single dad right now from Fitchburg with his child in the shelter. It depends on, who has the need at the moment. Sometimes there's more people on the waiting list because the shelter's full. As we know, all the shelters are full now, and they're opening up new ones, here and there and everywhere. So it depends on the day, but that's why we're here, to be ready and available.
Well, my question is, what's your success rate? After you help the parties get on their feet, what's the success rate?
So, we can throw percentages, and some of them are real and some of them are guesstimates, and I don't like to give you the wrong impression. The way that we track that is we track families for 18 months after they leave.
No, you don't.
Okay? And we've talked about this before. However, sometimes people get a new cell phone. People don't answer their phone. People move out of state. People do all these things. So you can never get in touch with everybody when they leave. So the way I usually answer this question, and I've done it for many years, is that we've only had 2 families come back for the second time to come through the shelter. So that's how I gauge it, is if they had the need, they'd be calling the phone and saying, I want to get on the wait list again. And that hasn't happened for Fitchburg residents or families or Leominster. So that's how I answer that question, because I truly, other than me haranguing them and chasing them down and finding them, I can't answer the question completely. I'm just being honest.
All right.
Okay?
I make a motion we accept it. Oh, sorry. I was going for one. Go ahead, Ken.
Are there any other questions for this gentleman? No? Okay, so any other questions on anything else regarding public facilities? Okay, I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we accept the block labeled public services, holding out item S as requested by my colleague.
Okay, there has been a motion made. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the block of projects under public services, excluding Project S, which is Mayor's Energy Fund. Do I have any objections to that motion? Seeing none, 8 of those 9 projects are approved as recommended. That leaves the Mayor's Energy Fund, Project S, for discussion or a vote.
Motion to approve.
I want to discuss it for a minute.
I'll hold.
Okay.
Please.
Counselor, you wanted to say something on the Mayor's Energy
I
Fund?
want to, can you say something about the mayor? The only reason why I pulled the $5,000, what I read in the paper and what I see on the news and what I hear on the news, there's so much out there for heat, fuel assistance and all that, that I don't understand why we're doing just $5,000 when it means really hardly nothing. And that $5,000 could have went to the Spartans Club or the YMCA to help more people benefit than $5,000 worth. I don't think that was right. Not when we get so many programs out there already.
Well, I will say most of for example, fuel assistance, which is the main program that assists folks, their income limits are 60% of the area median income. This allows us to help those folks that are between 60% and 80% of the area median income. So we're helping a pool of folks with these funds that couldn't be helped with fuel assistance.
They couldn't get help from fuel assistance?
If their income is over 60% of the area median income, they are not eligible for fuel assistance help.
Good. He wants to talk. I yield the floor. I yield the floor for now. Listen to what he's saying.
I just wanted to say, yeah, that is a common thing with government assistance programs is there's very often a gap between the top end of what you can make and have the program help you and the lowest end of where you can actually afford it for yourself comfortably. There's usually a gap there that people fall into, where as long as you're up here, you don't need the assistance. You can afford it as long as you budget properly. If you're down here, you get the assistance from the state or the federal government, but in here, you're kind of stuck. The state programs are telling you you make too much, and you're looking at your budget going, how do I make too much? There's no way I can afford this. So there is a need to kind of close that hole so that there's a continuous spectrum from, total impoverishment to total self-sufficiency, rather than a cliff that you fall off of when you hit a certain point. And I think the aim here is to partially close that hole.
Can I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
How many people does it help? Approximately how many people? An average bill in the wintertime costs about, heating bill costs anywhere between $400 to $600 a month.
I don't manage the program, so I only know a little bit about this, but my understanding is their average is about $500 that they're offering.
So 10
it helps about 10 families, yeah. Or 10 families that would otherwise not be able to get help.
Right. But if we put 10 families down at the Boys and Girls Clubs or the Spartan Club on the YMCA, now they don't have to come home and turn the heat on. They don't have to get to heat the wall to save costs. All right, go ahead.
I've said this for the previous mayor as well, who has attended these meetings. This specifically is the mayor's request and her recommendations, and she's not here this evening to speak to those. I know Director Murphy takes the fire usually, but this went through a planning board review, went through a mayoral review, now it's before us. So while some of the questions Director Murphy can directly answer herself, things like this one in particular, I don't know who else can answer this other than the mayor herself, since she requested $25,000 and then she relented and allowed it to be reduced to $5,000. So your question as to why it's only $5,000 and why she agreed to the $5,000 should be put to her, really. And she's not here, but I would
All right,
say.
it's not worth fighting. Go ahead, pass it. Go ahead, pass it.
All right, motion to approve item S.
All right, go ahead.
Motion made and seconded to approve Project S, Mayor's Energy Fund for $5,000. Any objections?
No, I'm pissed about it. But no.
There are no objections. It passes, recommended by the committee. So the whole block has been approved as recommended. Next, we will move on to economic development. 4 projects totaling $172,256.64. The 4 projects are Project V, Small Business Technical Assistance, sponsor New View Communities, request $30,000, recommended $30,000. Project W, Sign and Facade Program, sponsor Community Development, request $60,000, recommendation $50,000. Project X, Small Business Development Funding, sponsor Community Development, request $90,000, recommendation $57,256.64. And lastly, Project Y, Downtown Coordinator, sponsor Community Development, requested $55,000, recommended $35,000. Any questions on those 4 items? Councilor Boschman.
Downtown Coordinator. Who's going to do the job, and are we farming that out?
It would be the existing downtown coordinator.
Is it somebody in City Hall, or is it somebody on the outside?
It's somebody who right now works for Fitchburg State University as part of our partnership. It would be brought in-house.
We're gonna be-
in the next fiscal year, yeah. And we're
Next
sitting-
fiscal year.
Just starting July 1.
So Fitchburg State, when we get this straight, is not paying half of the salary. Are they still paying half?
In July 1, no.
In July 1, no.
Correct.
So we're going to do it inside the house. We're going to do it inside the house.
We would be putting that in front of you at budget season, yes.
Interesting.
Members of the council.
That'll be fun.
Members of
It-
the council, I just want to
it-
say something. We hired an economic development person, and I personally believe that that's her job to do that kind of work. So I'm not going to support the $35,000. I believe that we have a person that can do that job, and I'm totally against it.
Respectfully, I think
What's that?
I said respectfully, I think the economic development director's job is a lot larger than just the downtown coordinator. Not just isn't the right way to put it, but the roles are a little bit different and the activities are a little bit different. I understand what you're saying. But our economic development director needs to look at the entire city and has larger goals, broader goals than assisting. Well, she does work with small businesses. I shouldn't say that she doesn't, but the downtown coordinator was a very targeted position that did downtown coordinating and also events. That's something that our economic development director would be limited in her capacity just because of all the work that needs to be done for her to focus on the event side of things.
May I ask you a question? Has anybody from City Hall or even the economic development gone downtown to some of the merchants down on Main Street and say, hey, how about donating some money so we can focus to help you guys out on Main Street? I know it's a two-way street with government working to try to promote downtown. I understand that wholeheartedly, and I'm in favor of it. But it seems like, I get the impression, it's like it's a one-way street. We made it a two-way street, but we're right back to a one-way street. And I don't think it's right.
I assume you're not actually talking about the street.
Well, I'm using that
But the partnership, yes, the partnership. We're at a challenging place because the university is at a point of transition with their president, and so it's a hard time for them to make commitments and decisions. And I guess that's all I'm going to say about it because I can't really speak for them.
All right, go ahead. I yield the floor. Go ahead, Mike.
President Sorelli, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to say something similar, just that it's two different spheres of influence. And yes, ideally, in the future, when we have, and we're getting there, but when we have a full-fledged, thriving downtown business community, I would certainly hope that most or all of those businesses choose to band together in a way that partners with the city to, to promote our downtown. But at the moment, we're trying to help a lot of these businesses get off the ground. And now, I can't speak with any personal firsthand knowledge about starting a business. I've never done it. But having grown up in what was at the time a startup business, I know that the early years are the hardest ones. That's when the business really doesn't have any money to spare to put towards collaborating with the city or to put towards basically anything that isn't going to have a fairly immediate return on investment, because their margins are razor thin in those first years, especially restaurants, which is a lot of what we have going in here. You probably know the statistic better than I do, but I seem to remember it was something like 90% of restaurants go under in their first year open.
I've heard that. I don't know. I don't think that's true. I mean, it's certainly not true in Fitchburg, right?
Right.
But
Well,
I
don't
do.
mean it
It
in a
is
bad way. I
it
just
is
mean
the
it's hard.
high. It is a high risk business for sure. right? The
So-
margins are very small.
You know, if we put all this effort into promoting the downtown, and then 10 years later, everything's thriving and businesses are still saying, oh no, you know, it's you guys' job to do all the promotion, we're just going to sit back and reap the rewards, then I'd be annoyed. But let's give them the chance to get well established. Let's continue to give them the shot in the arm that they need to become thriving businesses. And then we'll start to say, well, how might you give back to the community now that we've helped you get on your feet and everything? But that's down the road. We have to make sure that they get to a place where they're stable and successful first over those critical first few years in business, and then look at the next steps. So if this downtown coordinator is going to help these businesses promote themselves and establish themselves and coordinate events and so forth, that's going to get us to that place where we can have somewhere down the road a Main Street Business Association, like there used to be the Water Street Business Association that my grandfather helped to found. But there's got to be enough businesses for enough years before that can happen.
And that is the goal. We've taken a couple of steps back because we did lose our in-town program director, and that position didn't get replaced. We are still, we're actually trying to plan a business meetup the end of March, beginning of April. So we're in that building relationships phase of working with businesses, and eventually the goal is to have them organize in an official way and take some ownership of downtown and the planning and the events and everything else that goes along with that.
Excellent. I yield the floor.
My question is, in the history of this position being restored, do we pay benefits for this job, or is that borne by
This
the?
job doesn't exist right now.
I mean,
As it exists.
in the past with CDBG usage, have we shared in the benefits of this person, or has FSU borne those costs?
This half includes the benefits of that person. So this does not represent half of their salary as it was and so we're using the same, I'm basing it on what they have right now, right? So this current fiscal year, this $35,000 pays half their salary and fringe. So their salary is not $70,000.
Okay. And you said next fiscal year you will be submitting a request to have this be a full-time position under your office?
And it may look different than it does right now. So that's something that we're still going through the budgetary process.
So if we were to approve this and then the budget passes, won't there be overlap?
If not all of this is used, it would be reprogrammed. And we would be coming back to reprogram. So this is, to some degree, a safety net.
So the fringe benefit piece of this 35 that we're contributing to, that's being paid by Fitchburg State, right? We're supporting them and paying this employee their full benefits by giving them a portion of.
Correct. The university pays their full salary and benefits,
Right.
and they bill us monthly for
what she's spending doing work for us.
From this $35,000.
Okay. So the reason why I'm hesitant on this now is because, not to talk about budget matters, because we'll have that battle in 2 months, because I find it very interesting that we're going to take a position that is not on our payroll and make it a payroll position with benefits, since we just finished talking about how we must radically change legal services or we're never going to have enough money for our benefits. But now we're going to add a benefited position. I'll have that fight in 2 months. That'll be fun. The history of this position goes back about 20 years. And I don't want to sound like a historian here, but to your point earlier and to President Zarella's point, I remember when Ellen DeGeronimo was the downtown coordinator and her stipend was $10,000. And that was a newly created position. under the Lisa Wong administration, because at the time we had the major recession that we went through from 08 to 13, everything got slashed. We did not have an economic development position any longer. The mayor assumed those duties at the time, brought on Ms. DiGeronimo for $10,000 as a downtown coordinator, and after a few years, that position was ultimately let go. And then
I think that position was actually initiated under my lot. Mayor.
I'm sorry, you're correct. So before Lisa,
Right.
so it was initiated under my lot. There were questions at the time of having an economic development director. The mayor at that time, Lisa Wong, when I was serving, said, well, I'll take the responsibility on that, and kept the downtown coordinator position. Again, 10,000 got you not much. But then during the budget cuts, that position was ultimately let go, the 10,000. So we went through a period of years with no economic development director, no downtown coordinator. And then under the prior administration, it was brought back through the CDBG mechanism in partnership with Fitchburg State as a 50-50 proposition, while it not being a full-time position for us or even a part-time position. We were basically reimbursing Fitchburg State. So that's the history of it.
I understand.
And we have an economic development director now. The economic development director's position, if you look at her job description, as has been stated earlier, it is encompassing of the entire city. And as we know from you, sir, who always make a point of mentioning this about why do we only focus on downtown, her position is to not focus on just downtown. In fact, her position would largely cover everywhere else but downtown, because downtown is just a small portion of the business community in Fitchburg. So she's got to be everywhere and coordinate everywhere. That was the logic behind bringing back a downtown coordinator to focus solely on Main Street revitalization and principally the events and the draws that come with that. And I assume that there will be more need for that kind of a role with the stage that's going to be going in at Riverfront Park, where there'll be more events. So there is a logic and a rationale behind why the position was restored through the avenue of Fitchburg State. Now that we're hearing that that might be removed, we have to reassess. And I certainly will join you in reassessing that come budget time. Because I'm speaking about this because I would support this CDBG use for this position, while Fitchburg State bears the employee. But I'm hesitant to support this right now, knowing that its future is grim, meaning we're going to pay for it 100%. When, as you point out all the time, and everybody else, we've got a lot of other pressing needs in this city, and I'm told every time that we should be farming things out because it'll save us a ton of money on pension and health care benefits, when the math doesn't suggest that. So I'm probably going to join you if you're voting against this and not supporting this until I see the budget, because that changes my calculus of the need for this. I support the downtown coordinator position through this mechanism. I do not support it as a full-time benefited position, which will no doubt probably yield a salary of, what would you say?
70,000.
No.
Less?
We were paying 70,000 in Fitchburg State.
We're
Counselor,
paying.
I've got the floor.
Oh, sorry.
What would be the estimated?
The position would look a little different and would have some different responsibilities, and I believe it would be somewhere in between. I think the budgeted that we're looking at is somewhere between 50 and 60. I don't know off the top of my head exactly what it is. It's not.
So it would be a 50 to 60,000 increase in our operating expenses, because right now we're paying it out of CBG, including the benefits. So and I just don't believe, as I've been consistent on, that this position warrants that. That's why I've always supported it through this mechanism. I like the idea that Fitchburg State is a partner, because they benefit from this downtown just as much as we do, and they have stakes in downtown, starting with that place right across the street with the theater block and the Idea Lab and this whole stretch that they own. So it made sense to me that we would continue to do it this way. And while I understand that there may be outstanding circumstances that are beyond your control, where Fitchburg State's going to say, we're not supporting this anymore, I have a problem with that as a voting member of the council with Fitchburg State, because they're acting like they're doing us charity work when they're getting a direct benefit from this partnership. And so I would like to see how that plays out. Maybe our mayor can meet with them and use her savvy to get them to continue this arrangement. But we'll have that discussion with her during budget sessions. I'm assuming from what I've heard tonight, that's not going to be the case because it sounds like she's going to put this in there. But to sum up, I don't support this position through that mechanism. I didn't then, I don't now. But I've always supported it through this mechanism. And I understand what may be said later on is that, well, let's pass it, let's get them going, because that ain't going to happen until July 1st. But my concern is, knowing what we know right now, I still feel personally I'm going to put my stamp of approval on future plans that, yes, haven't been brought forth yet, but this mechanism of how we're doing it is uncertain at the moment, and that is giving me pause to support this until I know for certainty how that's going to play out. So I don't know how I'm going to go on this, quite frankly, because I know we need someone in there soon or to continue, and we would just cut them off right now. But, yeah, so, Councilor Zarella.
Thank you. So, again, I very much support the concept of this position. And I'll even go so far as to say that if we were flush on budget, if we had money to spend, then I would love to eventually see this become a full-time city position, because I think it's something the city does need. However, in our current budgetary situation, where there are many things, I don't want to even say more important things, but more urgent things that we already cannot afford and that could use an additional $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 put towards them. I share the concerns of the chair regarding the potential for making this a fully in-house benefited position going forward. However, insofar as this particular allocation of funds is under the pre-existing model, where it is not an in-house position, where FSU is paying half of it and we're reimbursing, I would like to see this allocated for the next few months at least, so that we can keep the work going. And then when it comes time to debate the budget, if it's a question between cutting it off or bringing it fully in-house, that's going to be a hard discussion, and we can have it then. But I would be in favor of passing this tonight simply so that as long as we are continuing to get the benefit of FSU's partnership on this, let's take advantage of it. Not in a cynical way, just in a, it's there, let's use it for as long as we have it. And if the time comes when we don't have it anymore, I think that's a decision we can make at the time. Certainly, I'll state on the record that I certainly do not feel that casting a vote in favor of this tonight or at next week's council meeting pre-commits me to supporting an in-house position if it should come up in the budget. I will be voting in favor of this tonight, and I will be voting in favor of it with the specific reservation that I'm in favor of it in its current form. I am as of yet undecided whether I could support it in, as a salaried, benefited position within the city, given our current budgetary climate. So with that said, I'll yield the floor.
Council Bushman.
My concern, Liz, last year, I fought against it last year.
Sorry. It's okay.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. I yield
Can I
the
go to
floor.
Councilor
She didn't
Walsh,
speak.
please?
She
Yeah,
didn't
Councilor
speak
Walsh,
yet.
please.
Go
Thank
ahead.
you very much, Mr. Chair. I just want to say I'm going to vote in favor of this because the item that's before us is the CDBG grant, not a full-time position at some point in the future that we may or may not know what that position does. So I think anything else is just speculation. This, we know what's before us. and I'm going to vote in favor of it.
Council Boschman?
I think, I want to talk about this. When Joe, that worked for you, the university, Joe, I don't know his last name. You know his last name, Joe. The guy that was downtown
Ferguson.
coordinator.
Joe Ferguson.
And when he took it over, he did a good job. And what I liked about it and what I believed in, and I believed in beautification. Beautification makes a big difference. I don't think the downtown coordinator made a difference. I think beautification made a difference. I think when you saw flowers and different things in front of the street and on the street, you wanted to draw people. That draws people downtown. Like you go to, I don't want to use other communities because people get upset, but when I used to go to downtown Medford, because I worked in Medford, and you went to their downtown, the flowers were unbelievable, and you felt like you were home, and it was really, really pretty. And I really thought, and I said it last year, if I'm not mistaken, you can go back on the record, that I thought it was pretty, very nice looking, with the beautification of the flowers and that. And if you're telling me that we're going to do that, that means we're going to have to pay for beautification too. I think we should pay for beautification of the downtown area because we wanted people to feel like they're at home and to see that. But to say to me, to tell me on the downtown coordinator too, and pay for the other stuff, I have a hard time to swallow that.
Just to clarify, we did pay for the city of Fitchburg paid for the beautification last year.
Right.
And if we do it this year, we'll be asking for funds to do it again. Right. It's falling on the city. When the program manager left, anything that the program manager was doing that the downtown coordinator could pick up, she did. Anything that she couldn't pick up to take on, the city of Fitchburg is doing it. If there's no downtown coordinator left, the city of Fitchburg is doing it all. The need for event marketing, for that kind of coordination to manage all of the activity that's been happening in this revitalization that we've been going through, that need is still there whether we fund the project or not, or fund this position or not. So if we don't have separate positions to take on this work, it falls on existing city staff. We will do the best that we can, but I can guarantee you I cannot take on more. I cannot. I can barely keep up with what I'm doing. There's a lot of good work that's happening now. I'm very proud of it, but it's hard to keep up with it.
Motion to approve the section entitled Economic Development.
Second.
May 15th's coming, don't worry. Motion made and seconded to approve. Just speaking on the motion, I will cast a vote in favor based on the simple fact that, yes, what we have before us right now is definite, and my concerns are speculation right now, although I'm sure the director is being truthful and forthright with what the intended aim is for the future of this position. I will reserve my feelings on that till the next time we have budget hearings on this, but because it's a CDBG request to fund this through the mechanism that I've approved of for many years, I will support it tonight, and then I'll have my battle with the mayor and the rest of the council on the future of this position at the appropriate time. So motion has been made and seconded to approve. Council Boschman?
No motion. I'm in favor. I'll support the city on beautification. On this position here, I have a hard time with, and I'm totally against it. I'm sorry. Even though we're paying $35,000. No, I'm sorry.
So a motion is made and seconded to approve. Do we want to separate that one out then, Counselor, because you're against it?
Yes.
Yeah, I would like to amend my motion to make a motion to approve projects V, W, and X.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve projects V, W, and X, excluding the downtown coordinator. If there are no objections, it is unanimously recommended.
Motion to approve project Y.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve project Y, downtown coordinator. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? One in opposition. Council Boschman. recommended by the committee 3-1. Next block is the rehabilitation and preservation. There are 3 projects totaling $151,000. Project AA, FRA Grants Program, sponsor Fitchburg Redevelopment Authority, request $150,000, recommended $20,000. Project BB, Critical Home Repair, sponsor Habitat for Humanity of North Central Mass, request $30,000, recommended $30,000. And then Project CC, Code Enforcement, sponsor Board of Health, requested $111,043, recommended $101,000 even. Questions on those 3? Council Boschman.
We talked to Habitat.
Habitat for Humanity?
Yeah, that's on.
Critical Home Repair? Anybody from Habitat Humanity? Yes. Could you please state your name?
Carolyn Reed, Executive Director, Habitat for Humanity, North Central Massachusetts.
I want to say thank you. I thought she worked in my ward for a couple of my residents, and they did a good job. I believe it's a good, well-paid. I'm giving you a compliment.
Well, thank you.
You don't get that from me that much.
Thank you.
Take the victory.
Consider yourself lucky.
Oh, God, what does he want?
So anyway, I just want to say I think you do marvelous work. I think you do help the elderly a lot. I really appreciate it. I think you should do a lot more advertising. I think this is a very good program. I think for the people that do not have a lot of money, especially a lot of the elderly, they should get on the bandwagon and try to call you up. I know a lot of things, when you get older, you like to keep, I'm up there in age, but remember, there's wisdom behind that age. And they tell you that you don't like to share all your information because now you just think you're back in the old times where you don't want to give it all out. But you did good work. You did that house up there on Franklin Road, and I appreciate it. And there was another house you did for me. You helped me out on the lady. You helped them out. So if I could give you more, Liz, next year, if we can get more money, it's a very good program, and it helps out a lot.
Thank
I'm all
you.
in favor of it, and I want to say thank you. That's why I called you up here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And it's a really well program, and as a ward council, I think you guys should recommend it too. I mean, she's sorry she gave me her phone number because I call her.
No, it's not. Enjoy talking with you.
Anyway, thank you. That's why I called you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
President Zarella?
I just want to say, I don't want this to come across as, I like all 3 of these projects. I don't want this to come across as an objection or even a criticism, because I don't have a better idea myself at the moment. Because unlike the budget process, the council basically gets this in finished form. I mean, the budget is too, but we go through it in a very different way than with the budget. So I don't know where I would cut money from, if I would cut money to make more for this, but I will say I'm a little concerned at the very small percentage that's being given to the FRA program, because I do see this kind of sort of building rehabilitation work as very important in the revitalization of our downtown, because for my entire time on the council, I've asked around every time I talk with anyone about why do we have so many vacant buildings downtown, the answer I always get, and I think it's absolutely true, is a lot of them are badly out of code and no one wants to spend the money to bring them up to speed. So I don't have any thought on what else we've approved so far that should have been cut to give more to the FRA. So this is not a criticism of the mayor or of her proposals, but I do wish that there were more here, and it's a little concerning to me that it's, considerably less than 1/3 of the requested amount. Like I said, I could not look through this and say, oh yeah, this thing should have been cut, because they're all great programs. But I would like to see us keep the focus on this going forward. And I'll yield the floor.
Council Walsh?
I'm just going to say I agree with President Zarella. I'm glad that there was some money given, but I would like to have seen more given to Fitchburg Redevelopment. I think they do great work, and it would be nice to see a little more help in that direction.
The other reason why there are vacancies still is because these landlords think they're sitting on gold mines. Right. They want like ridiculous prices for their properties, not caring about the fact that a prospective buyer is looking at it as a money pit. Right. So they're not dropping their price. I was being generous by not calling them geniuses, but I've heard a couple down the street here who think they're sitting on like $800,000, $900,000 properties. Yeah. Well, if they feel that way, they should put money into them first. But, when you don't live here, I guess it doesn't really matter. I will just say that while I agree that there is nowhere that we could reduce that I see to fund more for the FRA, what's interesting is I think about what was just told to us earlier about the potential for the mayor to create a whole new position, fully benefited at $60,000, when we could just take this code enforcement line and give Mr. Curry a full-time staffer without CDBG reliance instead for that $60,000, and then repurpose that $50,000 or $60,000 to the FRA. Problem solved. All right, because as far as I've been a counselor, he's always needed that money to fund half of a clerk. And, if the mayor has $60,000 lying around, that would be an area I would suggest get him off of CDBG reliance and use that money for that instead. But again, we'll have that talk in 2 months. Council Boschman.
Let's go back to the FRA, but I'll talk to Liz, because Liz may know more, because I understand what you're saying, Councilor, and I like the FRA, and she knows it because I go down and talk to her, too. But my question to you and to Liz, we get tips on downtown, don't we? Tips on downtown development. We get tips, and it's not there. And is it not true what the government's doing? They're coming out with more grants so people can develop, especially since we're in the 1.5 mile walkway of the MBTA?
I think you might be mixing up a couple of things. So the TIFs for development would come before you guys. So we haven't had a TIF for a development, I don't know, a long time. So for a small business that is a tenant, most of our businesses are tenants. They're not owning the building. I'm not sure a TIF is.
No, I'm talking about
so you may be talking about
FRA, the FRA, and giving more money so they can help out the people on Main Street develop their properties. Am I not reading that right on this?
This would be funding design. You could say.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Megan Donahue. I'm the Executive Director of the Redevelopment Authority. We intend to use whatever we get, and I'm grateful for whatever we get, to actually fund these projects citywide, because I know we want to extend our reach. In fact, we're creating a new urban renewal district with the help of Liz in Lower Cleghorn.
My ward.
Yes, is your word. But we are trying to extend our reach more than just downtown, because there is a lot going on, and we need to help the other parts of the community. So with whatever money we get here, coupled with our own money we pair together, we'd use it throughout the entire city. So I'm grateful for whatever we get.
And if I may add to it, the CDBG, when it comes to economic development, can be a little bit tricky to work with. So we had to limit, the funding can only be used for micro enterprises, because sometimes design might happen, but the business might not move in. And so if it was a business that wasn't a micro enterprise, that was a larger business, more than 5 employees and higher income business owner, we'd have to create a job there. And so we don't want to put the FRA in a position to say, oh, in order to get this design money, you have to create a job.
But we do give grants to not just building owners or property developers, we give them to the business owners as well. So if they need architectural drawings for their little storefront, or their store, or whatever, their office, we would give this grant to them as long as they follow through with the process. So, and we give up to $2,000 per, excuse me, per applicant. So with the 20, we can fund up to 10 applicants, which is, I think that's great. So,
All right, I got a question for Steve Curry.
oh, thank you.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate it. And keep up the good work. Mr. Curry, how are you tonight?
Good, Mr. Boschman. How are you?
And I won't keep you long. I know you had a long day and you're tired. And Liz wants to go to a party up the street. She told me already.
No, and it ends at 9.
Oh, 9? But, Steve, on your $101,000, when can we start? And when will the 40U start in the city of Fitchburg?
I believe we're very close, but probably a few months away. I'm not a part of a lot of the decisions that need to be made in the near future, but I believe we're a month or two away from.
A month or two away?
Yeah.
Is that right, Liz?
Yeah, we have to work with our software to get that, to handle the system that we're creating. So there's some technical work that needs to be done now.
All right. Okay, that's what I wanted to know, because I just want to tell you, I think you do a good job. I want to say thank you to your crew that goes out there, and especially Matt Bernard in my ward that hasn't put up with me. I call him a lot. I call you a lot. You do a good job in the vacant properties and that. Sometimes I think it's a little bit slow. Some things we disagree, you know that. But I think it's well worth it. I think I wish we had more money to give you. Maybe next time, maybe the government will change its ways and we'll go back up to $2 million. Who knows? But as long as we start seeing it in the neighborhoods, that's where I want to see it. Because the neighborhoods are the veins of the city, and if the blood can't get to the heart dies. So that means the veins is dying here. We got to change the veins and fix the veins. So I just want to say thank you, Steve. Then I wanted to know about 40U. I figured that was part of the 101,000. Didn't you think that, Marcus? You didn't think that? I did. You did. All right. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Council.
Motion to approve items AA, BB, and CC.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the rehabilitation and preservation package of $151,000. Any discussion?
No, I'm all in favor of it.
Seeing none, I'll take this on unanimous consent. It's recommended as is. Lastly, planning and administration, one project, $190,000. The CDBG administration, sponsored by the Community Development Office. Councilors, please note that federal guidelines require that no more than 20% be allocated from this package, this funding, to administer the program. So this represents that 20%, correct? Or
It is
close
still
to-
an estimate.
Yep.
We can allocate more than 20%.
Oh, okay.
Because it's an estimate, but we can't spend more than 20%. So
Okay.
if the allocation comes in a little bit lower and we need to reduce it, we would reprogram the difference.
And this 190 does this cover fully the CDBG administrator's job or
Yes, and parts of other staff.
parts of others, like the parks and playgrounds?
So, yes, so our senior project manager, who manages all the construction-related kind of
So
projects.
when you get the budget in May, you'll see on many of the line items in Ms. Murphy's department, CDBG funded percentages. That's what this 190 is going to be applied to. So it covers one full-time position and partial of several other positions in our office that involve themselves with the CDBG package. Yes.
And just for clarity's sake, or to confirm, these various reports that are discussed in this funding blurb, those are all things that are required as a condition of the CDBG funding, correct?
Correct. So what we're doing right now is part of our action plan, our annual action planning process. So there's a very substantial report that actually gets submitted to HUD as part of this that goes into what we're going to do and what goals we're meeting, what objectives we're meeting with all of these different categories. And then in the fall, we're always reporting out on how we did in the last year. And then every 5 years, we have to develop a 5-year.
Right. And the reason I ask is just because I get questions sometimes from people who read through this and are then saying, well, what's the point of all these reports? Couldn't we move some money out of this and into one of the other projects if we just didn't do these reports? And I just want to confirm for everyone, it's not that Fitchburg just decided, hey, we're going to do some more analyses and reports so that they can get filed with the clerk and sit on a shelf. It's that we have to do these in order to get the money from the government.
Whatever the state and the feds give us, they want to know how. I mean, I hate saying that, give it, it's our money, but they want to see what we're doing with it, and, you know, that's a requirement. Same thing with ARPA. When we got the ARPA allocation from the feds, there was a considerable effort from the auditor's office and beyond about maintaining the reporting requirement for that, for the Treasury and stuff. The reporting requirements were ridiculous. So to get $32 million, we had to spend $50 to administer it properly, and I think that's a good trade-off. You know, because if we said, no, we're not going to spend $50,000 to report to you what you want, they'll come back and say, okay, we'll take the $32 million and give it to the town next door.
Yeah.
So I don't think people would like that too much. But, yeah. So, Councilor Boschman.
Question. Did I hear you correctly? You have to report every 5 years to say how we're doing. How are we doing on the CBG funds?
She said 5-year plan.
Yeah, 5-year plan.
So we report annually on how we did, you know, what we spent our funding on, whether we achieved our goals. And then every 5 years, we have to develop a 5-year plan. So we develop a 5-year consolidated plan, which is a larger planning process. And then within that 5-year plan, we have annual action plans. So this year, we're in, I think, year 3 of our 5-year plan. This is an annual action plan.
No. I've been on the council 13 years. I mean, not 13, sorry, 10 years. 10 years. I've been in CBG 5 times, 10 years. 10 years, so it'll be 10 years. How would you say the neighborhoods are doing underneath the CBG plan? Do you see as a person, do you see any kind of improvements of our neighborhoods underneath the CBG plan?
I would say CDBG does not provide nearly enough money to be able to make in and of itself, a demonstrable difference. It helps individuals and households, and to a degree neighborhoods, especially when it comes to our parks and playgrounds, and we can see the tangible benefits of those kind of activities. But it's not in and of itself what's moving the needle. I do think we are seeing some movement in the right direction in our individual neighborhoods, and we're seeing a lot more development and investment in our neighborhoods, you know, because there's a lot of opportunity for developers here. But is it in and of itself what's changing our neighborhoods? No. It's one element of what changes our neighborhoods.
Well, do you think the quality of life in our neighborhoods are improving? I noticed.
Yes.
I noticed.
Yes, I do.
When we made the big changes in Clegon, and a lot of you guys were just babies, still playing out in the streets, but when they took down a lot of the multifamily houses, and then they went into the single-family homes, and they made residential up there, like on Plymouth Street, part of Fairmont Street, Clarendon Street, Blaze Court, Arches. Remember those places? And they were always in the front page of the paper. It made a big difference in the quality of life in the city, in that area. But I don't want to be negative. I'm going to be negative.
We get a lot less now than we did, what would that be, like 15, 20 years ago when the Plymouth Street Initiative was happening? And our dollars don't go as far as they did. But yes, we've made some targeted improvements. Elm Street's another good example where we
Right.
took down a number of multifamily homes. That wasn't just CDBG, that was also our home funds, which is a separate housing entitlement that we get. So between those two, we can have some tangible improvement with, especially with our housing. It just doesn't go far enough anymore. I mean, we had to stop administering our homeowner repair program because, and that was mostly funded with, it's mostly revolving CDBG funds, money that's been lent out in the past and we're getting back, and home funds. Our average cost to rehab a house, to bring it up to full code, somewhere between $75,000 and $100,000. So, we couldn't justify having a whole program when we could only manage to do a few homes in a
Yeah, you told me about that.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't want to be negative, but me being in my 70s and driving around the city of Pittsburgh, I guess I expect a lot, and I wasn't not that impressed. I think our neighborhoods, I keep on saying it, our neighbors are in disrepair. I think they need a lot of work. I think we have left the neighborhoods behind, way behind, and I think we should take a turn and start looking back at the neighborhoods to try and improve the quality of life for everybody in the neighborhood, whether you be rich, poor, or middle class, or anything. Whatever quote you want me to say to make it political correct, that the neighborhoods are not as good as they were when I was a kid. They were exciting, and they were fun, and they were there. It's not the same. And I'm not trying to look back at yesterday to have the kids, the people of today be my generation, but I don't see it solved in the city of Fitchburg. That's me. I'm trying to explain it the best I can without hurting people's feelings.
I feel like our neighborhoods are in better shape than they were 10, 15 years ago. Maybe not 50 years ago. Your perspective is different than mine, right? And just age.
Yeah, but you look at the full glass. I look at the glass that's not full. I don't have the rose-colored glasses on. I get the regular glasses, and I don't see it rosy. I see it what I see. And
your point is valid. I mean, we need a lot of investment in our neighborhoods, and it's not just CDBG that's going to solve all of that.
All right, I yield the floor. My counselor to the right wants to talk.
Thank you. I mean, on the one hand, I'm not sure that's relevant to this particular funding item, but I will say, yeah, undoubtedly, our neighborhoods are not the same as they were. I wasn't around 50 years ago, but I know what you're talking about. Our neighborhoods aren't the same as they were back then. I don't think that can be laid at the feet of the city or really any individual. It's a cultural shift. Neighborhoods aren't as cohesive as they used to be due to a large number of factors. You have two-income households, meaning there isn't someone home all day chatting with the neighbors. You have people, you have a lot more people renting rather than owning, which means in some cases, I certainly don't want to indict all landlords. There are some great ones out there. But in some cases, it means no pride in ownership. It means milking a property for everything you can wring out of it and not caring about it because you're not living there. There's a lot of reasons that our neighborhoods have declined since 50 years ago. And that's not something the city can fix, even if we had unlimited funds, unless we wanted to literally just go in and fix everything every time it broke. But I do think our neighborhoods are better than they were 20 or 15 years ago. And that I was around for. There were some nice neighborhoods when I was growing up, some neighborhoods that were great to take a stroll through, but there were also a lot more neighborhoods then than there are now that it was just generally known, you don't go there unless you have business there because it's a rough neighborhood and there's nothing there for anyone who doesn't have to be there. there are places like that in every city, but I feel like there are fewer of those places in Fitchburg now than there were when I was growing up. And that, I think, can be attributed, not entirely to the city, of course. Individual residents have their role to play, and I think a lot, and so do investors. But I think a good portion of that can be attributed to efforts the city has made. We've got a long way to go. I don't think there's anyone in this room or watching at home who's going to disagree that our neighborhoods need help. But I think we're moving in the right direction. And I think that to the extent that we're not done yet, that's not the fault of anyone who's working on tackling the problem. It's just a testament to the scope of the problem. And the problem itself is culture-wide, not Fitchburg-specific. And there's no easy fix, money or no money. So, I think that our community development department is doing a really good job, and I'm not implying that my colleague said otherwise. I think that the department's doing a really good job, and I think we need to continue to forge ahead. So that being said, I'll make a motion to approve Project DD.
I'll second it. Imagine that.
Motion made and seconded to approve Project DD. I'll just say that I've been doing this for a very long time. The city is remarkably better than it was 18 years ago. And yes, I will say that much of that had to do with the prior administration, not because of my relation to him, but it's just a fact. And, one thing to note is our crime rates are significantly lower than they were 15 years ago. Significantly. Exponentially, if you do a percentage. But that stuff doesn't get reported much because it's good news. We can't have that, So what I like to say about our neighborhoods is I detest the phrase of bad neighborhood, okay? It's a challenging neighborhood. There's a lot of good people who live in challenging neighborhoods. To say that I'm not saying you said this, but I just hear it in the general public. Oh, that's a bad neighborhood. Those broad brush statements are not fair to many of the hardworking people who live in those neighborhoods that are good people. And therefore, I like to use, terminology is important to me. It's a challenge. We have challenging neighborhoods. There's no bad neighborhoods. There's many good neighborhoods in our city, many less challenging neighborhoods than more challenging neighborhoods. But we're the city of Fitchburg. We're going to have challenging areas and not so challenging areas, and areas where there's no challenges at all. But that's like that in many communities. Not all, but most. But in the communities that we have in this city that have been historically challenged, things have gotten better, but there's still problems that exist. And you're never going to eradicate them 100%. You're probably never going to eradicate them 60 or 70%. They're going to always exist. But what we need to do as elected officials is instill confidence and pride in people that even though they live in what would be considered challenging situations, we believe in their ability to persevere beyond that. And we're here to help them do that when they need to, when they need us. And that's what I believe local government should be, is a support system. We can't fix everything. We can't fix most things, but we can at least be not wearing rose-colored glasses, but at least speak well of our community while calling out the challenges that exist, and those residents would agree as well. But I never liked terminologies I've heard for many years about bad versus good, poor versus affluent. There are challenges amongst many areas in our city, some more than others. But the people are decent people by and large, with their own sets of circumstances that we have to recognize, be mindful of, and certainly in situations like this, promote the good in our people despite the challenges that many face, that we try on a weekly, monthly, yearly basis to alleviate but they know as well as we do, it's not that easy to do. So it's a community partnership, you know, and so that's how I like to look at it. And being here the longest, and I always mention this because I remember vividly what this city went through in 08 to 13. We all lived here, but I was here politically to withstand that storm. And I guess that's why I've always been a cheerleader now, because I look at where we were 15 years ago, and that feels like ages ago, and I feel like a lot of people have forgotten what that period was like. We're nowhere near that anymore. Not even close. And so that's the perspective I have. Could there be better improvements? Of course. But what I try to do going forward is accentuate the positives, recognize the challenges, do what we can do as in a government to help out without understanding that we're not going to fix everything or most things. We have to rely on our people to figure that out as well, but we're here to support them. And so that's how I look at the Community Development Office in stewarding that partnership and that open arm of assistance where needed. And there's a lot of pride in this city. There's a lot of history in this city. And yes, there are people that have many challenges, but we need to recognize the fact that by and large, most of those people who live in those challenging areas are very decent and good people. And that's my
Very well said.
State of the Union speech. I have a motion made and seconded to approve the administration funding. If there are no objections, it is approved.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. If there are no objections, we are adjourned. Thank you.